So let's talk about the Parashat this week. And the reason I love it actually is not, maybe it's not that good, but the reason I love it is because it's an epiphany for me. It's like, for the first time I realized something about a story that I'm reading for the past 40 years. I never realized that. And I'm actually not sure that anybody, I've never seen this written anywhere. So you have millions of Jews studying Torah for thousands of years, and you have something that seems so apparent in the text, and millions of Jews for thousands of years don't think about it. Why? I don't know why. And maybe someone did think about it and just never got printed anywhere, but whatever. So for me it's like, is that possible? Like you find like this new discovery, and we are starting this Parashat Vayeshev. Parashat Vayeshev is the transition between the generation of Yaakov and Esav and the generation of his children. So last week, Yaakov and Esav have their encounter entering Israel, the big fight and the big peace. It's a big story. But then there is a transfer that goes to the younger generation when they're going to settle in Israel, and the children will start to take on action that is not necessarily decided by Yaakov. One of the famous examples is when Dinah gets kidnapped and raped, and so they come and avenge her, and they kill the whole city of Shechem. Yaakov is enraged by that. He's really angry. You guys are criminals. But instead of the details of that story, what we see is that there's a transfer of generation lead. The young are taking a lead. And so in Parashat Vayeshev, what we see is that Yaakov, as a father, is increasingly on the backstage, and the children are increasingly on the front stage. Basically, there's a new story that emerges. And the new story comes with its new duality, its new main character, its new conflict, its new suspense, right? So who is now the heart of the story? Who takes the heart of the story? Yosef. And the story will stay between Yosef and his brothers. And that's a fascinating thing, because Yosef will remain the central character, almost until the end of the book of Vayeshev. And it will be quite a roller coaster. Is that 3 o'clock? Okay, I'm going to put a timer because I have a 4 o'clock meeting, and it's going to take time to get there. So I don't want to get past. When you go to someone's for shiur, he's in his office, he's busy, he's this. You come 5 minutes late, he was busy. I mean, not that it's nice, but when someone comes for a therapy, he's in distress. If he waits, he feels every second of it. It's just not acceptable. So what I see is now the conflict of the story with Yosef and his brothers. And that story will go along for many parashiot. It's a hell of a roller coaster. Fascinating. People made movies, series about it, books, incredible. It is a captivating story in itself. In short, Yosef is the favorite of his father. The children are jealous of Yosef. They end up fighting among themselves. They decide to kill him. You know the story?
No.
They decide to kill him. The older brother said, let's not kill him. Don't want to kill him with our own hands. Let's let him die. Let's condemn him to death without killing him directly. So they threw him into a pit, into a well that has no water, but it's filled with snakes and scorpions. And then, while he's in the pit, and they sit for lunch, and they see a caravan of merchants traveling away. So they say, instead of killing him, let's sell him as a slave. We'll make some money, and we won't be murderers. They sell him as a slave. And he's being sold as a slave by his own brothers.
No se murió en el pit.
No. They sell him as a slave to his own. They sell their own brothers to
As a slave.
As a slave. He's being sold in a slave market in Egypt, acquired by an Egyptian prince, wealthy guy that can buy slaves. He's very handsome, he's very bright and wise. Seems a good slave. And starts the second chapter of Yosef's life as a slave. And you will see that the roller coaster of his life is actually never ending. It's a fascinating thing that is filled with ups and downs, but incredible highs, incredible lows. And you think, how can someone bear such a movement in his life? So I'm going to go very fast forward the small chapter, like summarize all the chapters. So chapter 1 is the top row, the preferred sibling, preferred son. His father gives him a beautiful tunic to distinguish him from his brothers. When he speaks, his father listens. He's the top of the tribe. From there, he gets almost killed and then is sold. As a slave, it's a miserable life. But as a slave, he becomes super successful. Meaning, he just takes care of everything. He's a genius manager. And he's bright, and he's handsome, and he's talented. And so the master ends up putting him in charge of the entire household. All his properties, all this thing. So he's basically the head, and he has tens of hundreds or thousands of employees under him. He's the head slave of all the slaves. He gets to relax. It's a new position. Not so bad. He's a slave, but has a good status. The wife of the master desires him. She tries to charm him once, twice. He keeps on rejecting her. She arms a plot at one point where everyone goes away. She pretends she's not feeling well. She stays home, alone, as Yosef comes forward, taking care of his job. She seduces him and forces him into a relationship. At the last second, Yosef runs away. She grabs him by the cloth. He just drops his clothes and runs. Like his outer garment, his coat. He just runs away. He says, I cannot do that to my master. And the reason for that so quote-unquote morality, our sages teach us, where did he get the strength? He got the strength because he saw a visage of his father. He saw the image of his father. And the woman, she's so offended. So she said to take revenge on him. So she's going to tell her husband that Yosef tried to rape her. And this is the proof, Yosef's clothes. That the master knows exactly who's his wife and knows who's Yosef. And so he has no doubt about it. But she makes such a fuss about it that he has no choice. So he throws Yosef in the dungeon. It's the second time Yosef goes into the pit. Once by his brother, and now by his master. As he's in the pit, there is no foreseeable future in the pit. Like they're out there. It's not like a 6-month sentence. There's no trial. It's just there. So what is the pit? Just a hole in the ground. They send you bread and water, and people rot there until they die. He spends a lot of time there. But he has so much nobility that the head guards decide to put him slowly head of the entire jail. So he's responsible of the welfare of all the prisoners. And he goes to make sure everyone is okay. He's the one that managed the whole thing. He has this great positive vibe. Once 2 slaves, 2 servants of Pharaoh. So that's an elite prison. Because his master was a great minister of Pharaoh. The baker and the sommelier of Pharaoh are sent to jail. Each one failing his job. There was a fly that fell in the cup of the wine. Jail for life. And so they are there, and they have dreams, and they are sad of the dream. They are preoccupied by their dream. And Yosef says, "Why you guys are so preoccupied today? What's going on?" "No, we have dreams. We're very worried. Nobody knows how to interpret us." So he said, "Tell me the dreams, and I can help you." They tell their dream. He says, "Your dream means that in 3 days, Pharaoh will take you out of prison, and you will be put back in your position as a prince." So the other guy, the baker, said, "Oh, that sounds exciting. I also had a dream, very similar. 3 baskets and that." He said, "Well, your dream means that in 3 days, Pharaoh will take you out of jail, and hang you, and birds will come and eat your skull. Okay? 3 days later, it's Pharaoh's birthday. He messages somebody, he calls him back. These guys that he have are not as good as he had. And his baker is kind of like not very happy about him, so he takes him away, he hangs him, and birds eat his head. So Yosef was right on target. Now, an important detail that we omitted is why the brothers were hating him so much. One, because the father was privileging him, but other is because he was riding on that wave. He was not trying to shy it off. And so we say in the beginning of the story that Yosef has 2 dreams. He has dreams. In his dream, what he has, double dream. What he has in his dreams, he's the center of the world and everyone bows down to him. His brothers and his parents are bowing down to him. And he's telling his dream to his brothers and to his siblings and to his parents. So they really hate him. Like, you really think you're going to be the king over us? So they really hate him. And so that's the first story of dreams. They hate him for that. They throw him to the pit, slave, back to pit, slave top, back to pit, dreams again, interpreted again. So being that he knows that one of them will be reinstalled, he tells them, when you get back to the palace, say a word to Pharaoh for me. Maybe he can take me out. I have not done anything. I'm very innocent. 2 years passed. The slave doesn't say anything, the guy doesn't say anything about him, doesn't throw a word. At 2 years down the road, Pharaoh has a dream. So for 2 years, Yosef keeps rotting in that pit. He feels like, I don't know if you know that story, The Vengeance of Monte Cristo. You've read it?
Yeah, no,
This is like an incredible book.
I don't know.
Alexandre Dumas.
It's a movie also.
I'm sure there's plenty of adaptation for that. It's one of my best Alexandre Dumas texts. I think it's far better than Romeo and Juliet, and it's an amazing book. That story is a bit similar to that to a certain extent. And maybe he was inspired by that, I don't know. But 2 years down the road, Pharaoh has dreams. And what he dreams about? 7 cows, very fat. And 7 cows, very skinny and unhealthy. And the skinny cows eat the fat cows, and they remain very skinny. Wakes up. Troubled. Back to sleep. 7. He has 7. How do you call that? Espigas. You know what it is, right?
Yeah.
I said it right. The trigo. Stalk of wheat. Beautiful, healthy, shiny. And then you have 2 very skinny and very unhealthy stalk of wheat. And they swallow the healthy. And they remain very skinny. And he wakes up. He invites all his interpreters, his philosopher. Nobody has interpretation. He's very worried. He knows that that's a prophecy for him. So when he got so upset at everyone, finally, the sommelier remembers that there was a good interpreter in the jail. So he says, I met a slave, a Hebrew, a young man, but he knew how to interpret. Pharaoh says, let's bring him in. So he comes and he tells his interpretation to Pharaoh. So basically you have 7 years of plentiful of bounty and 7 years of famine. And he gives him the whole interpretation of the dream, being that you're the king. God wants to let you know what's going to happen with your nation. You need to take care right away to save all the grain in the times of bounty. So you have how to survive in the time of famine. If not, everything will die. Genius. Revelation. So Pharaoh says, do we have anyone as smart as that, as wise as that in our entire kingdom? He's going to become the viceroy. Nobody lifts a finger without his order, without his command. I'm the only one that is above him. He goes from down of the pits again to the top of Egypt again. Long story. Many years later, famine hits. The brothers and the family in Israel starve. Nobody has food. The only one who has food is Pharaoh, who kept the food because of Yosef. So the family comes to Egypt to buy food. They don't know that Yosef survived. They don't know what happened with him. They get there. Yosef recognizes his brothers, but they don't recognize him. They can't imagine that as a slave he comes to a viceroy. And there's a huge story of how he's going to greet them, play game with them, accuse them. He's going to play like really intricate with them. Put them in jail and then free them and put them in jail. It's like a huge telenovela. But in the end, he's going to face off. He said, I'm Yosef. Is my father still alive? Let's bring everyone back to Egypt. He's making peace. This is like a very, very summary of huge, fascinating story. So here's just a simple reading. Where does the idea start? The idea starts at noticing something specific that I realized is hidden at every intersection of the story. First of all, I want to say that we have Yosef having a relationship with different type of people, and it's always an escalon higher. So the first act is a relationship with his brothers. Doesn't end well, but that's the first act. Second act, relationship with his master. Ends seemingly very well until he falls. So he has a success, but he falls off the success. Back to the pit. Third is the relationship with the dreamers, the servants, the sommelier and the baker of Pharaoh. Fourth is a relationship with Pharaoh. And after he completes this fourth relationship, life brings him back to have a new relationship with his brothers. And at the end of that roller coaster, he'll find peace with his brothers. And maybe what we see here is basically Yosef and his brother all along. But for him to be able to mature his relationship with them and them with him, he had to go through so much in his life for him to grow and know how to handle success, how to handle superiority, how to understand leadership. Leadership as someone that is at the service of and not in superiority of. And for him, it will take a long time just to understand that relationship with power. And so the first relationship with power he has with his brothers, it's not working. Second relationship of power in the house of his master, he thinks he had it all. Small thing can make him fall down. The third time he wants to have a power, because he's the interpreter, he gives freedom, he announced the freedom to the people. And for the first time he has some humility. He tells the sommelier of Pharaoh, he tells him, interpretation of dreams belong to God. Tell me your dream. Meaning to say, God has the key, not people. So maybe I'll be his channel. You have nothing to lose. He mentions God as the source of his talent and his power. So he has a relationship with power. He is a man of power. Wherever he goes, he becomes the head. Even in jail, he becomes the head. So he remains, he keeps his extraordinary attitude, even in jail. But for the first time, he understands a bit as a lesson. And tells him, God has the power to interpret dreams. I'm helping you, but someone is backing me. Where does he fail? And what does he rot for another 2 years there? He rots for another 2 years because at the end, he tells the man, throw a word to Pharaoh. And the Chachamim say, why did he have to wait 2 years? Because he did not trust God can take him out of there. He placed his trust into a man. And so his understanding with power starts to emerge within him. But I still think he could manipulate his own destiny by manipulating the people and orchestrating events. Just take it cool. If someone will take you, it's not going to be him, it's going to be someone else. This is how the Chachamim explain the 2 years gap here. And when he finally meets Pharaoh, it's again for dream interpretation. And this time he has a very different language. He says, God is the interpreter of dreams. He will tell you the interpretation. He completely removes himself from any spotlight. Very humble at that moment. And he does that before, during, and after. And he keeps on telling, God told you that, and God gave you that dream, because you can see a certain maturity of humility that Yosef has, he never had before. So if you contrast that last encounter with Pharaoh and the first encounter with his brother where he tells his own dream of power, it's a very, very distinct relationship to power. So this is the first pattern I show. After that encounter with Pharaoh and succeeding over that relationship with Pharaoh, he's finally mature enough to confront his brothers, finally. And let's see how he's going to manage it now. That's the ultimate test. Now, another thing that this is indicating, and it's actually the beginning of the thread that leads us to that. There's something very puzzling that happens every step of the story. When the brothers throw him to the pit, the Torah says like that. First of all, they see him from afar. Why he comes? Because his father sent him with bread to go and give bread to his brothers and see how are they doing. They are shepherding in the wild. Go. He was not shepherding, he was studying Torah with his father. So he has it well, it's the privilege. So he goes carrying bread to his brothers. They sit from friends and say, okay, look at the dreamer. Referring to the dream of being the king, everyone's going to come down to him. They don't call him by his name. They don't call him Yosef. They call him the dreamer. Here you have the beginning of dehumanization of a person, where he's removed from his identity, and we just stick him a new branding. Then the second thing that they do is they strip him off his clothes. So now they strip him off his dignity, more than just identity. You can have a different identity that is not yours, enforced upon you, but it has certain dignity todavía. They strip him off his clothes, meaning his presentation. So they take him, they strip him from his identity, and then they strip him off his dignity, and then they throw him to the pit, basically down to his death. And the fourth thing that they do, it's literally in that sequence. After they throw Yosef into the pit, and the brothers sat and ate bread. They just had lunch. And this is the most unexpected words to see in that story. Because you could imagine, maybe they're going to be very stressed, maybe they're going to be very, they're going to be a fight, an argument, or they just sit and have lunch. And they eat the bread that Yosef actually just brought. It's absolutely inhumane, very cruel. The good luck is that from that lunch, happens to be that during that lunch they see the caravan of merchants. So, maybe we just could sell and make some few bucks out of it. So that horrible lunch might have saved Yosef's life. But that's the providence on their end. It's kind of embarrassing to be a descendant of these guys. It's extraordinarily cruel. The coldness in which you just kill your brother, and you just have the gut to see them eat, didn't you lose your appetite by now? And that's very surprising. It's literally Vayeshev lechol lechem. It is so surprising that the Midrash compared that lunch to another lunch that we have in the Megillah, when Achashverosh and Haman plot to kill all the Jews. The Megillah has a verse that says, V'amelech ve'Haman yashvu lishtot, and then the king and Haman sat to drink, while the entire city of Shushan is in mourning, is crying. So you see, basically, you have the city crying for their death, Yosef screaming in the pit, save me, help me, and they enjoy their feast. So, comparing that lunch with Haman and Achashverosh, that's not a guy I would like to be compared to. It's the Hitler of the time. First, very, very puzzling part. The second act, he meets with Potiphar, the master, Egyptian master, right before he has the incident with the wife that throws him to the pit. The Torah says that he became the top leader of the entire household and everything. And the Torah says, and Yosef became handsome and beautiful. When he became handsome and beautiful, was he? If he was handsome and beautiful, he was always. And if not, he didn't have a plastic surgery now. So what happened to him? And so Rashi says right away, seeing that he was in position of power, he started to eat and drink and comb his hair. So you can imagine a slave that started to eat and drink properly. Now he looks better. But you see that he starts to eat and drink again. So you still have an intersection of food. And when the food comes into the play, the literally next verse is the wife story that crushes him down to the pit again. And that's weird. Second time. When he's in the pit, finally we have the story of these two princes of king. That one is the prince of bread and one is prince of drinks. Somewhere and the baker. What do they have that dream about? About bread and wine. Food again. One has a dream of the grapes that he's going to put in the cup, and the other one has dreams with basket of bread. It's again about the food. When Pharaoh 2 years down the road will call him to interpret dreams, what is going to be the dream about?
Wheat.
Again food. Again food. And when he's going to retrieve and confront his brothers, it will be again because of food. And within all the small play that he's going to do with his brothers, he's going to play with seudah, with meals, orchestrate meals with them. With that, they know that he's Yosef. And they're very worried, why would he invite us to eat in his palace? And he places each one in his position. Food is like an essential part of this entire story that seems to be completely unrelated. First of all, obviously people eat every day. But why is that important? So clearly we have a struggle with relationship with power. That's the underlying story. But in the mechanism, how that struggle with the power, the relationship with power is played out, is always seen through the food, through the relationship with food. Why? And this is the epiphany. That all of that has to do with food, all the time all along. And because you understand that it has to do with food, now I need to connect all the dots and the puzzle together, the dreams, because every step there's a new dream. The dream, the power, and the food, and the person. And here what comes out. How do you say bread in Hebrew?
Lechem.
Lechem. When the Torah says that the brothers sat and ate bread, it says Vayeshev lechol lechem. I realize that the letter of lechem are the same word as chalom. What is chalom? A dream. So bread and dream are the same root, share the same root letter. So, okay, that's interesting. Now let's look at food. Ochel. What it means, ochel, food. What is the root of that? So there are two interpretations of that word. One root of that word could be vayechulu, meaning it finished. Like vayechulu hashamayim va'aretz b'chol tzava'am on Shabbat. God finished the 6 days of creation.
Pero como finish is the root of...
I'll come back, I'll explain. And the other explanation is kilayon, destroyed, consumed. Like when Moshe sees the bush, the burning bush, he said, V'asne einenu uchal. The burning bush is not consumed, it's not destroyed, it's not consumed by fire. So, ochel can be viewed as consuming the food, destroying the food. Or it could be seen as completing the food in a sense where the food comes to his objective, to aliment and nourish someone. And both are actually a source of it, or a source for that word. Now, the problem here is that they're very opposite meaning. Vayechulu hashamayim va'aretz, when God finishes creation and he gets to Shabbat, it's the objective of creation. I worked for 6 days and now I'm getting to Shabbat. It's the day of rest. So it's the completion of the work. Completing something It's kind of like arriving to your objective is a construction, is a building of something. I finally completed my home. So you're actually building something that finally has purpose and meaning. That's a positive thing. Destroying something, consuming something is basically burning it, destroying it. That's what kilayon means. It means burning and consume and making ash. So now that we realize that food in Hebrew is not so simple, because it could be the completion, offering a purpose, or a destruction. So then you think, what will make it a construction or destruction? What will make our relationship with food a positive or negative, a constructive relationship or a destructive relationship? And basically the one that will make the difference is the man in the way he eats. And
Control.
basically, purely intellectually, or just abstract from man psychology, in the world you have 4 elements: mineral, vegetal, animal, and human. Correct? Mineral is the earth and the water. And everything. From the mineral and water. From the mineral grows vegetal. Vegetal is more alive, but is less alive than animal. From the vegetal grows the animal. You say, well, some animals are carnivore. Yes, but what the animals that are carnivore eat?
Other animals that eat.
That are herbivore. This is the story. So the vegetal aliments nourishes the animal. And both vegetal and animal, mineral and vegetal, nourish the animal. Animal drink water also, and they take nutrients from the earth and everything. Mineral, vegetal, and animal are nourishing man. But the problem is that man is not necessarily above animal, because part of us is animal. We are cognitive animal, but animal nonetheless. We could be different than an animal if we bring purpose to our life. And so we have an ability to be human. We are not intrinsically human. We are by default a hybrid creation that has an animal soul and a divine soul. And if I relate with my humanity, to have empathy when I don't have to not use force when I can, as opposed to an animal who will use force when he can, to refrain from eating someone alive when I cannot, when I could eat it alive, just because I think it's immoral. When I realize and apply inherent human right to my fellow human being because I consider him being created an image of God. Regardless of what he does or not, he has inherent rights. So now I connect and relate with my own humanity. So if my food comes and nourishes me and becomes me, because it's going to become my blood and my energy and my calories, so it's going to become me. That mineral, vegetal, and animal that I'm consuming becomes me. But when it becomes me, what it becomes? Does it become human? Or does it become back to something that is mineral, blood, or animal, human animal? Where does it go? Does it go higher in the scale of creation? Or is completely lost? Because now, for sure, nobody will ever eat him. He's going to have to go back to the earth and restart his entire cycle again. Being earth, decomposed, back to mineral, back to a plant, back to...
But a loss is not deconstruction.
Well, the body, for the body to be consumed again by nature and becoming mineral that can reproduce a plant, the body will gonna have to be destroyed completely. The human is destroyed.
Okay. O sea, the root of okel.
We'll come back to that.
Yeah.
So the body decomposed, is destroyed. And so when someone eats food, in fact, the way he approaches food is, am I using the food to serve him, to bring him higher? Or I'm using everyone to serve me, and so I bring everything to a collapse. In other words, our relationship with food is an expression of our relationship with power. Am I using the other? And I'm calling that the relationship with the other. Am I viewing the other as someone that God puts on my way to serve him? Like, why would I have this person in my road? Why did I meet that person? Either because God wants me to learn something from him that can help me contribute to the world, or because I need to help him. Either or, my encounter with him needs to help someone else. The other way of looking at it is, the other is here for me, to serve me. And if I can't utilize him for me at my service, I'm going to discard him. His use will be meaningless. And so relationship with food, in that understanding of food, actually is a representation of our relationship with the other, which is intrinsically the relationship with power. Where all the dream come up with that. Because the dream have the exact same thing. The Gemara says, when someone has a bad dream or a good dream, it doesn't mean that it will happen either or. But when you're going to look for someone to interpret your dreams, make sure you go to someone to interpret the dreams properly, in a good way. Because depending on how he is going to interpret the dreams, this is what will happen to you. So is my dream a good dream or a bad dream? Well, it depends on you. You could make that same story a blessing or a curse. And here is where everything comes back together. From the beginning of the story, since Yosef starts as a child having his dreams, it's all a story of perception that creates reality. He's perceiving himself and perceives power and his relationship with power in a certain way that enforces that to become the reality in his life. And he crashes down. He tries to evolve a bit more. He crashes again. He evolves a bit more. So you have Yosef 1.0 with his brothers, full failure. 2.0 with his master in Egypt. He makes it good. He seems to handle, he knows his place. But he starts to eat and drink and combs his hair. He feels like, I got it. No, you didn't get it. You don't understand yet. So he falls again. It's a misunderstanding of his own position of power. Finally, he mentions God with the other people in his interpretation. But he's still trying to orchestrate and manipulate history. He still gets stuck. When it happens is after he got stuck. Even after that, he realized that's Yosef 4.0. And Yosef 4.0 meets the king. But now he's ready to meet the king. And if he would have met the king earlier, it would have been a disaster. The same way it was a disaster before. And once he meets the king and he makes it, he's able to confront the ultimate challenge, the regional challenge. His brothers. Now he can speak to his brother again. And he's still going to manipulate food. Sitting them around the table. Lishbor bar lechem. To break the bread together. And he's going to hide the cup of wine. It's always going to be around that. But finally he's matured enough to understand the weakness and the fragility of power. And when someone understands the fragility and the weakness of power, he has a tremendous humility to that position of power. He realizes he is just here at the service. And I see that as the most magnificent story that could have happened to the Jews before they are now all collectively will confront the new king of Egypt collectively as slaves, because now they're all going to have to struggle in their relationship with a higher power that will abuse them collectively. And then they're going to have to go free. But all that story with the slaves, the Jewish slaves going out of Egypt, it's the same thing, a relationship with power, but on a collective scale. Had to start with individual maturity between Yosef and his brothers. And that went through a hell of a roller coaster. And that's the end of my shiur.